Stand and say the pledge with me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Let's see. First on the board will be the agenda approval.
I'll move to approve if there's no changes.
Let's see, back where I was. Agenda approval, so it was Tom. Thank you, Tom.
I'll second.
David had his hands up.
Oh, did he? Oh, you go for it, Dave.
Thank you, David. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Public input. I see no public, so we will skip that. Consent agenda. Mary did point out to me this morning that Jennifer from DW Jones is here. And we do have the DW Jones reports on the consent agenda. So does anybody want to pull that to ask Jennifer
Yes,
questions?
because I have questions.
All righty. So with the modified consent agenda, can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Steve.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. Any further discussion? Well, I guess the further discussion is do you want to do the DW Jones before old business?
Sure.
Okay, we'll move her there. And with that, if there's no further comment, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, down to the DW Jones reports.
Oops, let me pull mine up here. Does anyone else have questions?
Jennifer, you drew the short straw.
I did. I'm actually the financial supervisor, so I read through them all this morning and got some questions that I had answered too, so I'm ready for you.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, two questions. One is on Meadows Edge, the net loss is $11,889. And then the other question is on the 4 units in Regency that have need a repair. When will that be done? So those can be rented. Those are my two questions.
And as far as the net loss for Meadows Edge, there was $19,000 in bad debt. That was applied to the bad debt expense account in March, so that attributed to the larger net loss.
Okay,
And think otherwise, and you can see the expenses increased by about $20,000, so our expenses are kind of right where they need to be, except for that bad debt item. That was somebody that probably vacated and owed past due rent, probably some damages, and different things like that.
And as far as the Regency, I can answer that question. Based on, and it sort of ties to the other agenda item, but based on our comments last month and really looking at the
Yep.
heating system,
yep,
we opted to start working on those units right now to get them re-rentable and then potentially use that against the match. So we're not gonna wait and do a bid or anything with those. We're gonna just go ahead and start working on getting those.
wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, so that we can get those re-rented and reoccupied. And then look at the bigger ticket items for the small cities program, the heating, if there's anything with electrical. But we're working, getting those, I've told them that they need to start working on getting those apartments. And then we'll likely have some bills for those. We can still use the set aside for the small cities program because what they allow is the match dollars don't have to be for project eligible expenses as long as they're part of the project. So if we expend part of the money that we earmarked for match, we can use that to pay for the upgrades to the apartments and count that against the federal money. So we can still do that and make that work. without having to necessarily go through that whole bid process and making it a longer, more arduous process. So that's what we opted to do, and then really hold that, so we can get the federal funding to really pay for like the heating system or any of those big ticket items.
Thank you, Mary.
Yes.
My other question, and this has probably changed with Meadows View and Meadows Edge. I gotta see if it's just Meadows Edge. You didn't have applicants. Are there ample apartments in the city, or people just don't want to live here?
So Meadows Edge, we are working with one applicant for unit 17, even though they said there was no application.
Yep.
20 and 27, 20 just became available May 1st. I didn't see any applicants that they were working with, but I'm sure it's still advertising on our website. Unit 27, that one has vacated, but that person is being held responsible, but we are still trying to rent it out.
And what's the chances of that person actually paying the rent?
Yeah. Not very likely. They pay
Yeah.
until they disappear, and then we put them in with collections, and we make sure that when they get landlord references from us, we give them a good landlord reference.
Didn't we change that?
Yeah, that was the other thing, the $99 deposit. I thought we had said we didn't want that.
Thought so too, yeah.
Okay. I
Should've
can bring
been-
that back to them.
Stopped quite a while ago,
Yeah,
Yeah.
at least 2 meetings ago.
yeah.
So I'm getting back to my question, because I believe, I can't remember who was here last,
Probably
That-
Bob, our regional manager.
that most of your units were rented. I'm not accusing you of renting over us at all. And Meadows View and Meadows Edge continue to be stagnant, kind of?
Meadowview is looking a lot better as of today.
Okay,
On all of the vacant units that we had, 16, 18, 21, and 23, all have move-in dates scheduled.
okay,
One move-in happened on May 8th. We have another move-in scheduled for May 22nd. Move-in scheduled for May 29th. And Unit 18, we have somebody that looks like they're gonna take it for June 6th. We just don't have a lot of extra paperwork on it, so I can't confirm that. We've
Okay.
gotten everything on that. The one for Unit 24 was working towards they needed a guarantor to
Okay.
be a co-signer. That one did not work out, so we do still have that one.
okay,
And as of today, we do not have any notices.
okay,
That's looking really good.
Okay.
I was impressed this morning.
So back to that $99 deposit, so typically you would have a $99 deposit. Do you collect the first month's rent up front too?
When they move in, so that,
Yeah.
so if they move in May, we're collecting it right away at May. But it's not put into a deposit account, so, but you want, and I know that, that was not brought back to me that I'm aware of about changing the deposit, so we
Yeah, I
want
would
it to be 1 full month rent.
Full month rent, and then, I don't have a problem with the $250 rent credit as an incentive to
Okay.
get them, but
We will
I don't know, I just hate to get that deposit up because we're kind of getting burned when they do some damage then.
When they damage stuff.
Yeah.
Or rent.
Yeah. But at least with the rent, once they're out, you have a chance to do something. With the damages, you've got nothing.
Right. Yeah.
do you know are a lot of other rentals in town renting with a $99 deposit?
Ours, well, I don't know about the market rate ones, but a lot of our affordables, we're not seeing any vacancy issues with our affordable units, but a lot of their rent is based on their income. So, that's not really a good comparable to these,
Yep.
to these properties at all. But we do run the $99 special at a lot of our properties that are market rate. It does work out, and maybe just given what we're seeing with the turnover and the damages people are causing here, this isn't a good option for this property, or for these properties, because it is causing more damages. In other locations, it's been working out great, people fulfill their lease, we're able to get lots of people in, and we're not seeing the damages and stuff, so.
Okay.
But maybe holding them accountable up front will help get some different clientele.
Any other questions?
It was nice to have you here. Thank you for
Yeah,
coming.
no problem. My plan is to come here once every quarter, so deal with the quarterly report.
Mr. Chair, do you want a motion to accept those financials then separately?
Yes, thank you for that.
I'll move.
Thank you, David.
second.
Thank you, Steve. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. On to old business, Farden Development.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We brought this up at our last meeting as kind of a conversation item. And last week I went to Farden Township and Commissioner Van Kempen was there as well. The meeting was pretty well attended. They had lots of questions and lots of interest. And the action and direction that we're asking at the end of this conversation today is that you would direct us to take steps necessary to make these parcels identified as 11 through 19, or however we end up having to split those out to be in compliance with requirements, that you would direct us to go ahead and start work on that and make that happen. So what that is gonna look like is we're gonna need to hire a surveyor to plot those out, work with environmental services offices to verify that they don't have any additional requirements. You can see that the intention of this is that they all have frontage on an existing public road, that we would then split this lot, this 07140270 is this 80-acre parcel. We would split it into these lots, and then the remaining green we would keep as part of the HRA EDA industrial park, so that it's right now providing the proposed access into the industrial park and connecting to proposed connection to connect County Road 101 with 315th Avenue once that railroad work is done. So I wanted to just provide a little context on that. We are working with WSN. I'll be having a meeting with Andrea after this meeting to review their proposal. And we're working with BNSF and MnDOT to come up with funding to close the two crossings at 315th and 323rd and improve the crossing on 101 to have lights and arms.
Oh, that would be great.
Yep, so that's the plan with that. BNSF has said that they have dollars available for the closing of the crossings. I believe they're gonna fund the improvement to the crossing and the rail arms and the signals. And MnDOT says they will match BNSF's funding relative to the closing of these two crossings, which means I hope that we can deliver this project, including the connector from County 101 over to 315th, for very little dollars. I'm actually hoping we can pay some of the planning dollars. Part of the conversation I want to have with Andrea is if she has any engineering funds left available, if there's an opportunity for us to split some of the engineering that we do here. Some of it can go against the HRA as planning and funds that we've already approved with WSN to do the planning work to create this driveway. But the actual designing and construction of this cutover, that'll be I don't know who's gonna own that road. That's part of the process that we have to identify. And I don't know how we're gonna terminate this northern portion of 315th and the northern portion of 323rd. BNSF will at least require that we put up dead-end markers at their setback lines on the north side of the tracks for both of them. But it's really kind of up to the township on how they want to finish that.
Yeah, I think the cheap way would just be put up a dead end sign and.
Yeah, just the
And a barricade maybe?
dead end sign and the barricades is the minimum that BNSF would want. So the scope of the engineering work that we want WSN to do is to design the closures and the improvements, and this reroute on the south side of the tracks from 101 to 315th, and do the 60% engineering plans for the driveway going into the HRA EDA so that we have a budget number for that. Should we get an interested party, we know what that's gonna cost. Because of the fatality at this intersection earlier this year, BNSF said they were out to 2032 for these parcels, for these projects, and MnDOT representative said, you know, based on this, I think we can do it in 27.
Wow.
So and BNSF said if you are willing to bump that in line and move something else back, we can accomplish the same thing. So this could get fast-tracked pretty quick. What I did tell the Farden Township officials and visitors is that once we engage WSN, that we would, we'd get together, we would tell them when they would expect to see 50 or 60% plans, when they would have conversations about what the options are about those plans, and then have some idea of what the rest of the project would look like. I don't have that available for you to approve. What I will probably do is have Andrea bring that to the first meeting in June and approve that under highway, and then we just identify that some of the payment might come from other sources for that project. As I heard, BNSF said that they had $200,000 available for closures, and MnDOT was gonna match that. And that's not really specific to, that's a pot of money that they have available for closing. So I think that is gonna be able to cover the cost of the closings, and take on some of the engineering for this preliminary project, but I just don't have an overall budget for this yet. That's one of the things I need to talk with Andrea about and talk to WSN about. What's the scope? We know the scope of the project that we're requesting for you to do, but what's the possible budget for that whole project to get that done in 2027? So that's the piece that we have to do for that. And all of these things happen at the same time. When we lot out these parcels, the intent is to sell them at a market rate and not have any contingencies on them. So people could buy them, to have them, to develop them, to not develop them, to put a house on it, to put a garage on it. Somebody could buy 2 of them and put toy storage units on it and rent them. There's a lot of different things that they could do here. The only thing that the township asked was that anything that was put on here would have a permanent foundation. They don't want to see a mobile home.
Oh, okay.
And I think we could work with that. Our intention would be very similar to what HRDC is doing with the lots available in the city of Park Rapids, that we would ask you to set the minimum price for each of these lots. We would do an RFP for a realtor who could represent these lots and ask them to give us what are they gonna charge for a transaction to close on this? So that we will have to have a public hearing to sell these lots, but then we won't have to have a public hearing to sell each lot. We could sell them as a group of lots, and then identify the process whereby they're gonna become available. One person emailed me already and said, we wanna buy this one, and what I said is, you guys will know the date and the information about when those lots are actually available for sale. I will notify you directly, and everybody else will get the same notice publicly, so.
So on 500, that takes care of, I mean, you already explained the closing and the railroad crossing, so that's a good thing. The 500th Street, is each lot gonna have their own driveway?
Each lot would have their own road access.
Okay, and then lot number 11, would they have an easement then through the shoreline zone?
That's part of the thing, we'd have to survey to verify that we can do 11 like that, or that instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, I don't know if we can do 9, or if we end up doing 8 and they become a little bit bigger.
Yeah, okay.
So the survey will identify the number of lots and the exact size. I will tell you from our first estimate, market prices for 3.1 to 4.4 acres were $39,000 to $49,000. The value of that is, remember when we were selling them at a discount? We were selling them at a discount with the criteria that they had to build a house on.
Yep.
And we were trying to increase tax capacity and build single-family homes. Here, what we're doing is, we're not doing that. We're not putting any strings on them other than permanent foundation. And if all of those sell at 80% of that market rate, it pays us back for the investment here, so we can reuse that money for additional investment. We could use that for the investment in this, and when we get somebody that comes in and puts money down and says, we're gonna build X and such on lots 9 and 10 in your park, then we would have money to go towards putting that road in there, but
So in the townships that I represent, they can't do Circle Drive, they can only have one access to a road. Do you have any idea of this township? If someone wanted to do a Circle Drive in here, say at the 4-acre? I'm just curious to how many,
Farden doesn't have any zoning.
well, we don't have zoning either, but we do have ordinances on our, what's allowed on roads.
They do have road standards. I am not sure if they would allow that or not. But a 4-acre parcel, all of these parcels, so I'm trying to do the math in my head again. A section is what?
1,300 feet? Or no, a section, you mean a mile?
A section is a mile, so this is a half of a mile.
Okay.
When you got 80, right?
Yeah. And then that was my question too. This is but that's with ESO. I think that's just the shoreline ordinance, but I'm not sure. And then is it the same on a township road where we can only have 4 driveways per quarter mile? So that would be 8 driveways and a half mile?
And it may actually be, that might be the number that we have to do so that we don't have to go through and do,
A variance or anything?
a variance or a planned unit development. If we just want to split them off, I think it might be eight lots that we can do.
Okay.
We have to do 7 on the other.
And they'd have enough room for a turnaround on their own property if the lots were
Right,
bigger.
so they would just have access, yeah.
It might be 7, it might be 8, I don't think it's 9. That would just make them a little bit bigger. The back boundary comes back to, there's an identified conveyance easement to the telephone data line, and it's an easy way to stop it. You don't want it to go all the way to the railroad tracks anyway, the lots are big enough.
Is that treed or grassed or?
That's very forested.
There,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And isn't that also like a trail? Like there's a bike trail or something?
Sounds like a
That goes through
cul-de-sac.
there?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a defining,
So the lots identified are actually to the
yeah.
blue piece, yep, and you can see that the whole thing is wooded, and the section north of the railroad tracks is still very wooded, so it provides a really nice buffer. The only comments I got about this connector between 101 and 315th is they'd like it to be as far north as possible, because there's a person that owns,
Yeah, they just built there.
they just built there. Is this is it,
Yeah, right there, yep,
right there, because this is the town hall, right?
correct.
Okay. So it's this one right here. They didn't want to have,
It's understandable.
and at some point, I even said that it's completely possible if a fence is required, that a fence could go in there. But we would initially at least ask it to stay as far north as possible. The trick is, past this railroad crossing, we need to make a turn that from 9-ton to 9-ton road, and the standard of semis to be able to make that appropriately, and then again to 315th. And then we wouldn't do anything past this point, we would just have the engineering to take it past that point.
The value of having that engineering in place is that there's opportunities. USDA has a program called RBDG, Rural Business Development Grant Program, and it pays for infrastructure. It's a competitive program that does require some match, but it also requires that a business be identified. So it's an annual application process, so, which is usually in June, July. which would mean that if we did happen to identify a business that was really interested in this, we may be able to seek that source to help pay for the infrastructure that would be required to get from 315th into the park. And by having those plans available, then we'd have pretty good estimates that we could use for that or any other application that we would identify as being meaningful to help pay for this.
So that was the intended program. The only thing that's on this, the other thing on this drawing is it's identifying a way to get in and access the 120 acres of the industrial park that's purchased. And it shows that this future 80, this kind of secondary design of the road dead ends down here, but you could see it could run down here and tie back up through one of these lot lines. It could make a loop. Or it could not make a loop if somebody came in and wanted 100 acres. Then it would just terminate at their spot and be in and out. So there's a lot of flexibility here. We would not be intending to convert this until and unless we had somebody that wanted to buy that whole chunk. Or we were running out of spots up here. Both would be good reasons to take that next step, but there's no intention to move on this 80 until and unless there's a signed agreement and or this is filled up. But that is the request for this item, is that you would direct staff to begin the process of splitting that parcel into lots and doing what we need to do to be able to sell those with the conditions that we've identified, which is none except no temporary structures.
Do you want a motion?
We would like a motion to direct staff to start that.
Also move, Ted.
Thank you, Shar.
I can second.
Thank you, David. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. New business, Regency heating system upgrade.
As I alluded to a little earlier today, is that we had a pretty lengthy discussion about Regency and the challenges associated with that, one of it being a heating system that could really be time for a replacement. I was a little concerned about, well, I have two specific goals, I think, that would be appropriate for this property. One is that we really want to improve efficiency. As I was looking through the financials and the gas utilization of the amount that Regency, which is a 15-unit building, and even Meadowview and Meadows Edge they're relatively the same. So it's not very efficient. And one of the other concerns that I do have about the property is that it's an all or nothing heating system. There's no zoning or anything like that. So if the heating system goes down, it's down. So my questions were, I had these questions with ICS since they were working on the evaluation of the structures, is there current capacity within the existing boiler tubing to be able to accommodate some additional work for adding zoning? Or do we have to redo, sort of the whole thing? And then what kinds of options would we have for efficiency? With the Small Cities program, we have to go out for bid and we have to have a work write-up. And based on sort of my skills, it would be replace the heating system. And then we'd get a whole bunch of things to try and evaluate without really having I don't have a very good or good enough understanding of what the different options are to be able to make any sort of recommendation about the effectiveness by cost. So I asked Jason at ICS what their thoughts are, and he said, well, they're working with a mechanical engineer and had him do a proposal to really take over that and evaluate the system, see what makes sense, and then be able to create a work write-up where the contractors would all have everything sort of the same to be able to give us a price on. So I got this proposal in the mail, or by email, and am presenting it as an option. We would not necessarily be able to use the grant dollars or the admin dollars to pay for this. I'm still researching whether or not we could use the grant dollars, because this is a little bit outside of just a standard work write-up. So I think we might be able to, but regardless, we would have the money from just our general, or the small business apartment funds to pay for the cost of this. I think that it would be a benefit to end up with something that's going to last as opposed to doing that, but I'm open to whatever suggestions you have to get the best heating system that we can.
So again, it's a boiler right now?
It's a single boiler system that was installed when the property was built in the 70s.
Yeah.
And it's just, as I said, it's one big boiler and that's all it is. And there's no zoning, so, you know, if something goes out, then it all goes out and those kinds of things. And I don't know if that's necessarily challenging, but I do know that on occasion, we have had with Meadowview and Meadows Edge where one zone will go out, but it doesn't take the whole building out, and so the crisis is not quite the same. That you're gonna lose all of your water line, you know, all of those kinds of things that can happen.
That was built into the construction. This building is significantly older.
Right.
To totally separate each individual unit on a zone, or even 2 or 3 units on a zone, might be a little more complicated than what we're thinking, but it would be interesting to see their analysis of it.
Yeah, because they actually know what they're talking about.
Well, what's it cost to change a boiler?
I really have no idea.
Anybody have any idea?
10 to 15?
Yeah, I was gonna say probably 10 to 15
I know that
for
we
a
did-
significant size of one.
Yeah, I know that we just replaced the water heater here, and that was over 6,000
Yeah.
for just the water heater.
So, my question is the $3,500 potentially worth it? Because I think any solution you're gonna find is probably gonna be a lot more expensive than $10,000 or $15,000.
The boiler's gonna be, a new boiler would be 10 or 15. Individual controls, how many units?
15.
$2,000 to $3,000 each probably for
Yeah, and
controls.
then we need new fins and potentially new copper.
You're talking 30 to 50 grand by the time you.
Yeah,
And I would think it's gonna be a fairly substantial project, just because, you know, I, again, don't know the quality of the copper that's already hitting. I know that a lot of the fins that are protecting in each of the units are bad and are going to be replaced, and so it would be sort of replacing the entire or most of the system. And I'm fine if we just do that and say that I was just curious whether or not we could gain additional efficiencies and whether or not it's worth it.
Is it worth spending $3,500 when there's probably an 80% chance that what you're gonna get back, we can't afford to do anyhow? That's what I'm thinking. You know, so we could get the report and get the ideas, but if we can't afford to implement the new ideas, we spent $3,500 that
We
could have
don't-
went to just replacing the existing system. If there's a high probability that what's gonna come back from the engineer is something we can't afford, why spend the $3,500?
We do have about $86,000 left in the grant funds that we have to tackle this project. And then of that, 20% would be our own match, and so, but we would use, so, you know, roughly we have of outside resources about $85,000 that we can use to tackle this problem.
Well, right, if we wanna spend that much money on the HVAC system.
They might have newer, more modern alternatives though compared to a standalone boiler.
I'm being very generous with the estimate.
Yeah.
It could be half that, but,
I
was the,
don't
would
know.
the $3,500 for the study be matching funds to the project if we do a project?
I think so. I think we can figure out a.
Maybe it's worth
And,
it.
and with this, we would be getting other options?
Well,
One would hope so.
what it says here is the scope of work that you can see that's on the screen right now.
So you get all these options, you can't afford,
Provide
what's the point?
existing conditions, and then include recommendations and narrative of the work to provide separate temperature controls for each tenant space, modify the system to accommodate, and so it's really about making sure that the automatic temperature controls and the HVAC system are working at their highest capacity.
I think it should also give an estimate to replace things as it is, without the
Yeah.
individual controls,
Oh, yeah, that's a good suggestion.
just to know the value.
Yeah.
And the other thing, maybe they might offer options like mini splits, you know. If replacing what is there isn't terribly expensive, that could be done to accommodate us for the short term, but over the long term, if there's like a mini split opportunities, those could be utilized as well to heat and cool each individual unit, which would, in sense, you would think would reduce our overall
There is
boiler
no air
cost.
conditioning now.
I know,
Yeah,
I know.
there is none at those.
And those are,
I'm just wondering if you could just go ahead and ask for some bids and have your contractors give you the information, just say,
Instead of
give us
going
some
through.
ideas instead of paying that $3,500.
Do you feel able to evaluate each of those proposals in order to know? The Small Cities Program requires that you take the lowest responsible bid. And if we feel comfortable on evaluating the various proposals, then I'm fine with that, or being able to make a case, but generally, we're not asking, if we're asking every person or every individual to give us their own idea, the likelihood of us getting apples to apples is a lot less.
If you know what you know what kind of outcome you want, and it's probably each unit be individually heated. Okay, that, you know what your outcome is, so you just go by, see what bids are the best.
That's your goal, but my fear is if it says you suspect, that's not gonna be affordable. That's what I'm worried
You're
about.
not paying anything when you're
Yeah.
getting bids from contractors.
But if you do solicit bids, as Commissioner Kruger's mentioning, you can reject them all.
Right.
Right.
You could also bid an alternate to replace the system as it is.
Right.
I would think on your boilers though, each exchanger in each apartment, there's gotta be a way to put a thermostat in line.
Yes, as opposed to an actual temperature control, but I don't think these do. They're not zoned at all.
No, that I do know, but beyond that, this is well outside of my area of expertise, so I really don't.
Does it hurt anything to work with Jason and review the option of just bidding the project with an alternate?
I can ask that.
And then bring that back to the board next month? I mean, does a month change anything on this one?
Not really, no.
Because it's heating system, we're not in a heating month.
No, I just don't wanna get bumped up to the heating month and then be having an emergency.
So,
I mean, I'm
So-
not opposed to getting the answer, I just don't wanna spend $3,500 to find out what we probably figured from the start, that any suggestion is unaffordable, and that you're just replacing what you have.
so
And
mini,
I would think somebody like Jason would be able to walk through and just look at this stuff and say, yeah, it's not even a possibility, just replace what you have.
I can ask them.
Or a good contractor that deals with boilers should be able to walk through there and say, yeah, you don't wanna go that route, cause that's gonna be very expensive. Or, yeah, it's possible.
we could start off with that and and go from there type of a thing?
Mhm.
Sure, I can do that.
Yeah. 'Cause I-
Absolutely.
See if you, can avoid spending $3,500.
Because I was thinking, if this was a single-family home, I think we could figure out the
Yeah.
heating system. But when it gets to be an apartment with 15 no less, do we have the expertise? But I'd also thought that same thing and talked with Mary about, do we just, have some local contractors come in and give us their opinions?
Yeah.
The mini split now, is that the thing that's, it's not like a window air conditioner, but it is?
The unit sits outside and there's a head unit in the room that brings the heating, cooling
Or
through
the
that
cooling,
head
okay,
unit.
yeah. And we have those at the shop, in the upstairs break room and in the office. And I've always kind of thought if it's a small space, this room might be too big for one. Would that work with those apartments too, or do you have to have more than one?
The catch is you would still have to have an operating boiler. This would be more to augment in the winter time, because they only cool down to or heat down to a certain outdoor air temperature, and then they just don't function.
Oh, okay.
Or they're very inefficient. So,
Well, then my-
Air exchange, the old air exchange kind
Yeah.
of system is really what they are.
A
but
heat
they-
pump.
Yeah, it's a heat pump.
Problem is, and if you run them when it's too cold out, you're taking the life right out of them.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yep.
how many of these tenants are gonna run the damn thing and not even think about
well,
that thing, and you're gonna
yeah.
be changing units
A bunch of them
all the
have
time.
automatic cutoffs. When it hits 10 degrees, they just won't operate.
Right, yeah.
'Cause in my experience, I don't like them, but I use them differently than, I use them remotely where nobody's around, then it's a problem, but
Well, I'll do some more work with Jason at ICS and see if we can figure out some alternatives that are less costly.
and it's not that that's that expensive. Just something my gut's telling me that you're gonna spend it and find out what we already knew, that
I do
there's
see it
not really any
escalating.
options, then you feel like
Yeah.
you just torched the $3,500
Yeah.
for
I see
nothing.
it escalating to $50,000 to $80,000, and yeah, that can happen rather quickly when you get into the technical end of it, so, yeah.
So if you could just, get Jason, or find just a contractor that he trusts to just go through there and give you a quick opinion.
Okay.
You might answer the question, say, yeah, don't even mess with it, or yeah, there's options here, then it's worth spending the money.
Okay.
Well, I thought that too with the contractors like that did the apartments.
Yeah,
Is one of those people local?
right.
And would they be willing to look at the situation for us and go from there? And I also, like I say, I also saw the value in the $3,500, because it's not a great sum of money. But I understand your point of view
Yeah.
too, that they might come back with something, like you say, that's $50,000 to $80,000, and so yeah, we'll do baby steps on this one, I guess.
Sure.
Do you want a motion to table till next month?
Sure, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, David.
I'll second.
Thank you, Steve. Any further comments or discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. On to the director's report.
I have a couple things that just, one's informational, and then a couple are future potential action. The workforce and economic development person from AMC reached out to me last week and asked, there is a change going through on House File 1141 that will provide additional investment authority to qualifying governments. What's interesting about it is that it will allow HRAs to, housing and development authorities will now be given investment authority that will allow for investment in local multifamily housing development. And while that doesn't sound like a big deal, what that really means in essence is that HRAs could have the potential of investing in market rate or other types of projects as an investment vehicle in order to spur public-private partnerships. that would allow for additional opportunities for development. So it is interesting. Clearly, there'd have to be a whole vetting process and all of the things about what you would want to do when you're looking at investment. But it could be an interesting new tool in the tool belt to help with multifamily development. So that was just one thing I wanted to make you aware of. It sounded like it was flying through committee, and so the amendment sounded like it was going through. I haven't double checked to see if it has been passed yet or not, but that was just an informational piece. The other item, or the second item, is that Minnesota Housing is going to be opening up relatively soon a community stabilization grant program. And the grant will allow for acquisition, rehabilitation, and resale, as well as affordability gap for naturally occurring affordable housing. And so it is purchase, rehab, and resale kind of model. But it could be interesting as a vehicle that the HRA could have some interest in doing in areas that are more remote. You were talking earlier about sort of the slum and blight of some of the trailer homes. There might be some properties that aren't in horrible condition that could be acquired, rehabilitated, and then resold with both affordability gap or potentially value gap. That would open up some opportunities. As we talked about, it's better to keep the homes that we already have as opposed to trying to build new. The reason I bring that up is that the application is supposed to be released today. The RFP and sort of office hours are coming up over the next month, with the deadline for submission at noon on the 23rd of June. So we have about a month. So if this is something that you have a high degree of interest in pursuing, we would have time. I think our next meeting is the 20th? Okay, so we would have plenty of time to review an application by our next meeting, but I can't wait to start an application if this is something that you're really interested in pursuing. So I don't need you to approve the submission of the application because you don't have one, but I'd like a pretty strong consensus that you'd like me to use my time and effort to really see if there's something. I may find that there's not enough properties that fit the requirement to give us a valid application. But if that's something you're interested in, I'm sure happy to try and create a program for it.
Do you know what the qualifications of a property would be for that?
Well, I think that you're gonna have to, it's gonna have to be something that's structurally sound, that would not need overwhelming.
Like foundation work and
Yeah,
new
you know,
rafters?
if it's structurally
yeah.
sound and the foundation is good, then I think most of it is eligible for this kind of a program. And so that's really gonna be the key, is there enough properties that would be competitive enough that we could acquire, and they'd have to be for sale.
I
So.
know of one right now.
Okay, well, there you go. If we did one, that would be better off than we've got now. So, if we know of some properties in your districts that, one or two of them, you know, if we did 3 or 4, which is plenty to do, it might be a really good opportunity for us to do something a little different, if you're interested in doing that.
There's that house up the hill from my place. The acreage has been sold for a while. I don't know if that's worth saving at all.
Yeah.
That's Josh Rover that's got that. You could reach out to him. find out a little more about that.
Yeah, it'd be nice to
House.
know a little more of the criteria of what's acceptable and isn't. I mean, we can all think of properties that probably could use some help, but how much, are we willing, how much is allowable to spend on a certain condition of a structure for
And
a
I'll know,
purchase?
yeah, I'll know the details once I looked this morning before I came over to see whether or not the application had been released, and it hadn't yet. It probably won't get released, and it's the anticipated date, so I'm guessing it won't be. But even so, I just wanted to make sure that if that's something you wanna pursue, then I'll get working on it. If it's something you're not interested in, then we'll just pass.
Well, I can think of properties in the city of Akeley and the city of LaPorte that would give them an economic boost. But yet again, I don't know what the purchase price of these properties would be. And, you'd hate to spend too much on something and not gain a lot in the return end of it to make it worth, if you only gain $1,000 in the end, was it worth it,
Well, yeah, you could fix it up and it could still be vacant.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what's the point?
I mean, if the price is too high now to purchase it, well, based on condition, well then, why would we wanna go in and do the same thing and not gain anything
Well,
other
if we
than,
could use.
you got rid of some
yeah.
blight, maybe.
Blight, and then if we can use outside resources to keep the price, if it was in good shape, is the price reasonable? And so if we could look at using outside resources to keep the price the same, but increase the value and get somebody living there, then does that really, mean that we've done a good thing?
I think so.
Cause I know there's some vacant lots in the city of Akeley too, that, they're just sitting there. Why couldn't something happen with those? But yeah,
And then maybe save a house that can still be used.
Yep.
I would say yes to check into it.
Okay, and then you can expect then at our next agenda, I will have a much more formulated something that you can actually approve for submission. And then the last thing that I wanted to bring up is that there is a program that is called the Opportunity Zones. It is a federal program that allows for preferential tax treatment for investors that have specific capital gains that they are looking to mitigate. If they invest in specific kinds of development within an opportunity zone. That program was initiated about 7 years ago, and it was set to sunset at the end of this year, as in 2026. However, it has been renewed indefinitely for 27 and beyond. There are, in the state of Minnesota, currently, there's about 128 opportunity zones. Park Rapids, the city, is one, and there's very specific criteria in order to be eligible. In the new funding round, Park Rapids remains eligible, and then there's one area that is sort of up towards the reservation and to the east. In the future commitment, the state who decides on the selection of the parcels, it has to go from 128 down to 74. So a lot of the existing zones are going to likely either disappear or be selected entirely. Right now, we have the opportunity to comment and make a suggestion that, from a county perspective, that zone should remain. So that is something that I think would be beneficial for this group to do, is make sure that we make a case that it will be a great benefit to continue to have Park Rapids as a eligible opportunity zone. Up to this point, they have not been able to find the right mix of developer, investor, and project. But that's not to say that that won't happen. And it then, you know, we talk about tools in the tool belt. If the city loses it, then they lose one tool. So, it doesn't cost anyone anything other than to have that as an option. So I would like to suggest that we go ahead and complete the necessary, paperwork in order to suggest Park Rapids stay on the list.
What kind of benefit capital gains are there?
So the way that it works is that the money that's invested is tax-free, and then any of the gains that you get are also tax-free. So it does shelter, it's pretty adequately sheltered for as long, and it's a 7-year term, but then you can reinvest and do some things. So it's a way of taking capital gains and really making them relatively tax-free. Yeah. It's specific housing development. There's maybe some other kinds of mixed-use kinds of things as well, so it's kind of narrow, and it has to be a very specific capital gain, and that's where I've struggled to find the right person. But as the Heartland Lakes United Visioning Group is starting to talk, one of the things that they're talking about is the transfer of wealth, which means that people now have opportunity to think differently about how they invest, and so having that tool might solicit additional investment that we haven't had before, so.
Yeah, I think it's worth it. I mean, you never know what can come along. Yeah.
And every dollar helps.
Yeah, so, you know, if we had a way to broaden the area that was covered, that'd be great, but it's only Park Rapids that meets the criteria that would make it eligible to be reappointed, so. I don't remember when the end of the comment period is, but, I will be.
June 30.
June 30th. So if that's something, we can have a draft for you to review at our next meeting, that, before we submit it for comment, so.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so that's all I had on the director's report, unless there was any questions or comments that you had for me.
Would that draft comment be better coming from multiple entities?
Probably.
You know, like the county, HLDC, the city, all those that, the EDA here have a role in this?
It could also be that we come up with a draft and we ask everybody to submit a template from their own agency.
Yeah, and I'll see, the counties were the ones who were solicited under the look that I had, but I will see,
See if they
what
solicit
options
others,
we
yeah.
have, yeah.
I just got a reminder in the email today, so that's why I knew it was June 30th.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Sure.
Sure again. How about that for a second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.